Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Deputy Monaco, for being here, and thanks for your service. In early March, we had Attorney General Garland before this committee, and I asked him a series of questions about 18 U.S.C. Section 1507, and specifically why no arrests have been made at the homes of Supreme Court justices in violation of that statute, which prohibits people from protesting or demonstrating outside the home of a Supreme Court justice or a judge or a juror or other officer of the court with intent to influence any court proceeding. His answer was succinct, but amounted to the effect that the marshals are on the ground, and the marshals have full authority to arrest under any federal statute, including Section 1507. About 3 weeks later, my friend and colleague from Alabama, Senator Katie Britt, before another committee, asked Attorney General Garland about a slide deck that she had discovered that was being used to train the U.S. Marshals who were performing their protective detail duty at the homes of Supreme Court justices. These slides seemed to contradict what Attorney General Garland had told me 3 weeks earlier. They contradicted in several respects. First of all, the slide number 4 says that in order to make an arrest there, they really need to be looking at something that demonstrates, quote, the intent of influencing any judge language, thus logically goes to criminal threats and intimidation, not First Amendment protest activities. Now, I personally, as I've poured through that statute, I don't see that as an element of the offense. It's not an element of the offense. There's nothing in there that requires it to have this separate, non-specified element within 1507 about the intent being something amounting to criminal threats and intimidation. That's not in there. Just as troubling, maybe even more so, is slide number 5, cited by Senator Britt at that same hearing, where it says that, quote, any contemplated U.S. Marshal Service enforcement action under 1507 should be coordinated in advance with the appropriate U.S. Attorney's Office. And as if that were not enough to discourage the marshals from making arrests under Section 1507 in this circumstance, it goes on to say that it is counterproductive to make probable cause arrests on cases that the U.S. Attorney's Office will not charge and prosecute. So I've been wondering, how exactly is it considered to be the full authority to arrest people under Section 1507, as the Attorney General has described, if you have to get pre-clearance first to do it, and if you're adding an additional element, one not found in the United States Code?
Well, Senator, I know the Attorney General has spoken quite directly to this about the direction that he has given and has repeatedly given to the Marshal Service, and the Marshal Service Director.
When he was asked about these slides, by the way, he was not aware of them. Were you aware of them? Were you aware of them before they were given to the Marshal Service to train marshals on how to protect the homes of Supreme Court justices?
No, Senator, but I also know that the Marshal Service Director has been very clear that he is will regularly review the training provided to the Deputy U.S. Marshals, who continue to this day to provide 24/7 protection for the justices, their homes, their property, at the unprecedented direction of Attorney General Garland last year. This has never happened before in the history of the department.
I understand that, but I'm asking about the enforcement of Section 1507. Now, you're the Deputy Attorney General. Under the organizational chart of the Department of Justice, you have supervisory authority, oversight over the U.S. Marshal Service. Is that right?
That's correct.
And so you're saying you had not seen these slides before the marshals were trained on it?
That's
I assume you've reviewed them since then?
I've seen the slides that you referenced that Senator Britt showed to the Attorney General.
And have you discussed them with Attorney General Garland?
I have not, Senator, but I would like to make very clear the direction the Attorney General gave to the Director of the U.S. Marshal Service, who himself has indicated that he has been told repeatedly by the Attorney General that he has full authority to enforce all federal laws, including 1507, as long as he's prioritizing, and the Deputy U.S. Marshals are prioritizing the life, the safety, the protection of the property of the justices, which is
under any of the other federal statutes under which they're authorized to make an arrest on the ground, have they added an additional non-statutory element to the offense, or have they required pre-clearance with the U.S. Attorney's Office prior to making a probable cause arrest?
Well, Senator, without necessarily adopting your interpretation of the slides. The director of the Marshal Service has been very clear. He's going to regularly review that training. He's got all the authority repeatedly given to him and directed by the Attorney General to enforce federal law. His priority, however, and that of the Deputy U.S. Marshals who are providing that security and that protection, is for the property, the life, the safety of the justices and their families.
And yet, since this slide was revealed to the public, he hasn't either corrected his statement or gone back to the Marshal's Service and asked that the additional non-statutory element be removed, or asked that the pre-clearance from the U.S. Attorney's Office be approved prior to the making of a probable cause arrest under Section 1507.
The statement by the Attorney General was very clear and not in need of correction. He was very clear about the direction that he is given to the Marshal Service.
He had no idea what direction had been given to the Marshal Service. No idea whatsoever. So we can say a lot of things about it. It was not clear, and he hasn't cleared it up, and it's rather inconsistent with what he told us in front of this committee.
Respectfully, Senator, the Attorney General was clear. His direction to the Marshal Service, to the Marshal Service Director, was to prioritize the life, safety, and protection of the property of the justices, to have the full authority to enforce any federal law.
With pre-clearance and with additional elements not found in the statute.
Respectfully, Senator, that was not the Attorney General's testimony. That was not his statement, his direction to the director.
Well, he wasn't aware of it. It couldn't be in his statement. He didn't know about it. Not when he talked to me, not when he talked to my colleague, Katie Britt. I see my time's expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for being here, Deputy Attorney General Monaco. And thank you for the work of the Klepto Capture Task Force and for Attorney General Garland's very clear, unequivocal commitment, as he expressed after signing a memorandum of understanding with Prosecutor General Costin the other day. He was certainly very forceful in his commitment. The Klepto Capture Task Force is pursuant to sanctions that have been imposed according to law. I want to join my colleagues in saying that in a very bipartisan way, we want an all-of-government commitment, including the Department of Defense, whatever obstacles there may be to its participating. I would like you to provide some briefing to us in another setting, if necessary. I understand your reluctance to do it here. Let me ask you, is there any legal obstacle in your view to declaring Russia a state sponsor of terrorism? This body, after the initiative that Senator Graham and I did, voted unanimously in favor of the United States declaring Russia a state sponsor of terrorism. I know the State Department has raised reservations. I don't believe they're legal in nature. Are there any legal obstacles?
Well, Senator, I'm not aware of legal obstacles. I do know, though, the first kind of analysis that would be done in that regard would be by the State Department. But I also know that the President has indicated that he would disfavor such a move.
But there are no legal obstacles.
I haven't personally done the analysis, but I'm not aware of them.
Let me ask you, we're all focused on klepto capture. The real money is in the sovereign funds that have been frozen. But as to those funds, as well as the yachts and other assets that you have seized, do you need more authority to transfer the proceeds to the Ukrainian government so that it can use those monies to rebuild the country?
So the seizure of sovereign assets has now occurred in jurisdictions around the world, and we have come together, the United States, with the G7 to be very forceful, I think, in saying that those assets that are currently immobilized, both here and in multiple jurisdictions around the world, must be and remain immobilized. And we have a pledge amongst the G7 to do that. The question of how to then use those to the benefit of Ukraine and transfer them is, I think, a very complicated set of legal questions. But we certainly need to make sure, Senator, that as we come together and have, and the G7 has been forceful on this as well, that Russia must be the ones to pay for the rebuilding. They must be accountable for the rebuilding of Ukraine. We have to act collectively and in a united way to put those assets to use, because frankly, if we don't act together as an international community on those assets, there will be seepage and there won't be as much force
to the extent the United States has immobilized or frozen those assets, we have them.
Yes.
We have a legal right to them.
Yes.
Under both international and our national law. Do you need more authority, the Department of Justice, to transfer assets that we control to the Ukrainians so they can be used for humanitarian purposes and possibly also military purposes?
We may well, and I'd like to come back to you on the domestic legal authority issue, which is, of course, what this body can provide. I think there are other very complicated issues of international law.
Well, international law has always been, in my view, complicated. Ever since I went to law school, I have never fully understood international law. It seems like a very kind of putty-like set of principles. But what I'm interested in doing is making sure that you have the authority to transfer to Ukraine real money, because we have a lot of real money in those sovereign funds that can be used by Ukraine to rebuild. And certainly everyone would agree with you that Russia ought to pay for the damage that it's done. I visited the mass grave sites in Bucha. I have been to Ukraine 3 times, twice with Senator Graham. The video that was played at the beginning of this session was graphic, but failed to do justice to the incredibly horrific crimes against
xuân đã về trên cành lá, tiếng chim kêu ngọt quá cho trời xanh xanh thẳm. Mùi hương nào rất quen, nghe như làn môi ấm, nghe như từ sâu thẳm đất truyền mình sinh sôi. Trong ánh mắt em cười có màu xanh khoái sắn, trong bàn tay xinh xắn có hình dòng kênh xanh. Mùa xuân về em ơi, cơn mưa đầu mát lạ. Mùa xuân về em ơi, nắng mới đã bay về. Và chúng mình yêu nhau bắt đầu từ độ ấy. Em đi vào xưởng máy khi trời còn hơi sương, và anh lại ra đi vui như ngày hội. Mùa xuân biên giới súng anh gác trời xa. Xuân đã về trên cành lá, tiếng chim kêu ngọt quá cho trời xanh xanh thẳm. Mùi hương nào rất quen, nghe như làn môi ấm, nghe như từ sâu thẳm đất truyền mình sinh sôi. Trong ánh mắt em cười có màu xanh khoái sắn, trong bàn tay xinh xắn có hình dòng kênh xanh. mùa xuân về em ơi, cơn mưa đầu mát lạ. Mùa xuân về em ơi, nắng mới đã bay về. Và chúng mình yêu nhau bắt đầu từ độ ấy. Em đi vào xưởng máy khi trời còn hơi sương, và anh lại ra đi vui như ngày hội. Mùa xuân biên giới súng anh gác trời xa. Và chúng mình yêu nhau bắt đầu từ độ ấy. Em đi vào xưởng máy khi trời còn hơi sương, và anh lại ra đi vui như ngày hội. Mùa xuân biên giới súng anh gác trời xa. Mùa xuân biên giới súng anh gác trời xa.